Hello, I'm Iskatu Today, I figured I would talk a little bit about how I got into Naraka and how I tried to become proficient at it, the way I train in it, the way I approach trying to improve, and the sort of lessons I learned and some of the things I was told about along the way that the game certainly doesn't really tell you about. About a year ago, I was contemplating making a much more comprehensive guide on this game, talking about all the menus and weapons and heroes, at least to a very, surface level introduction, but I don't think this game's ever going to see much in the way of growth in the English-speaking world at any point, so it doesn't really seem there's really much point in doing that. But every now and then the conversation does come up from individuals on how to really prioritize or improve or where to look for improvement or so on. This game is kind of non-direct, right? It's very nebulous in how to actually break into it. And I have about 1650 hours in this game, and I still don't understand, I would say 90% of it. So, of course, right at the gate, this game has very, very high hardware requirements and very, very high geography lottery requirements. Most people are sporting 400 plus FPS. Now, in here, it says I have 60-something MS, which is just not true. But the ping indicator in-game is also tied to your FPS. And this goes into kind of a large subject I've talked extensively about in my other learning about Naraka and other just general discussions. Is Hypernova, of course, as I mentioned before, he went through quite a while showing me a lot of very strange interactions of the ping indicator in this game. If you use something to limit your FPS down to, say, 30 and then individually change your FPS, the ping indicator goes all over the place, jumping from 10, 20, 30 plus at a time, and it just makes no fucking sense whatsoever. So this game, just in general, is just a fucking mess. It's a mess under the hood, it's a mess out of the hood, and that's before we get to the allegations that the server tick rate for North America is not very good either, which also has a lot of impact. But if you want to actually be successful in this game at a high level, if you want to be able to play ranked or Immortal War, you need to have very low ping and you need to have very, very high FPS. That's because this game is just like Fallout 76. All the animations and a lot of things like float timers and iframes and stuff like that are all scaled based on your animation speed, and the animation speed is tied to your FPS because Naraka does not use delta timers. Yeah, the game is built by a phone developer, and they only use transactional netcode on cell phones. And this game here has some real cobbled together mess of netcode. Apparently it used to be better back in the past, at least for high ping, but it had some other issues, and then they castrated it and fucked it up, and it's been fucked up ever since. Keep in mind, in China, they have an FPS cap in the NBPL, and they have, I think, 3 servers set up so that just basically almost anywhere you are in China, you have land speeds. So the game is built with a very specific environment in mind. They couldn't give less of a shit what happens elsewhere in the world. They don't read any feedback. They don't interact with it. There's no moderation whatsoever. You can do lots of teaming and stuff like that, so you'll never be banned for it. Lots of hackers, cheaters, stuff like that's going on. People run something called micro. They use a piece of hardware or a piece of software to increase the animation speeds even more. And that's a big thing because when you're at my performance, I run a 7900 XT and a 5950X, an extremely powerful system. Any game in the market I can run on max settings, I will have no problems whatsoever. Naraka, I technically don't have too many problems other than all the performance issues Naraka itself has. But because it requires me to have, 400, 500 FPS, the CPU cache is actually the limiting factor in this game because they have so many issues with the memory management, and that is where the bottleneck for this system is at, because you basically need to have an X3D processor to compete in this game. If you're not running on an X3D system, give up any ambitions of making that much success within ranked. A lot of the combos, a lot of the attacks, a lot of the mechanics and stuff like that are just flat out inaccessible to you. You can't do them unless you have around 240 plus FPS. They become more consistent and more reliable as you go up. More is always better. Always. There's lots of videos of people doing all kinds of changes to the engine to strip it out and get like 1,000 plus FPS. And, you know, for the longest time, you could just bring up your Windows menu and cause the game to stall, and that would let you get restands and stuff like that out of it. And this stuff is just rampant and extremely widespread. So you can expect people to be doing all kinds of shit like that on top of the existing advantages they will have over you in ranked. And since there's no moderation, they're never punished for it at all. So with that in mind, when I got into this game, I was forewarned you're not going to be very successful. I was running on a 2700X, and that ping indicator on the top right, that said 110 ms most of the time. Sometimes it would go down to 100. I upgraded to the 5950X. I saw like triple the FPS all over the place. Unreal Engine became so much faster. The editor became lightning fast on top of everything else. Debugging stuff became faster. Encoding, you know, videos became so much faster. Naraka gained like 1020 FPS, and the ping indicator dropped down to an average of 70 to 85. Although, due to the fact I live A, in an apartment, and B, a shithole country, that will often spike into the thousands or just outright disconnect me. Which means that no matter what I do, how much I practice in this game, I won't be able to interact with the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people are going to be rubber banding me out of everything. I'm going to have strange interactions all over the place. And if they have very low MS or very high MS, it really doesn't make much of a difference. Actually, the most amount of success I've had in this game is playing with an individual who says she's around 100 MS and has about 400 FPS, in stark contrast to another person that server hops and gets about 100 MS, and I don't know what her frame rate is, but you basically have to file a legal document to get a parry through on her, and you'd have to do it like quite a distance in advance. So same ping, or around the same ping between the two. Extremely different interactions. One is the most reliable I've ever had in the game. The other is definitely like the worst. So there's no predictability whatsoever. So you have to come into this expecting that, right? Like, you have to prepare yourself, A, for a very high learning curve. I would say not as bad as Brood War, but definitely, like, it's the first game I've played since Brood War that comes in the shadow of Brood War's learning curve and skill ceiling. And a lot of that is just due to the very poor way that Naraka is designed. It's got an extremely high emphasis on iframes. And if you have low FPS and high MS, or really either, you're going to really struggle because the iframes are going to be very unreliable, and when you try to iframe, it's just not going to work. And for example, a lot of transformers like Iron Wang, at my performance, you cannot iframe them at all. They're just completely uninteractable. You're just stun locked for the entire time. Once they transform, you just die unless you get an immediate, you know, terrain advantage on them to get away from them. You just cannot interact with them at all. And you watch like Numza or Hypernova. Numza's ping isn't even really that good, but his frame rate's insane. You know, you just sit there and just tap dodge through all their attacks and maybe emote at them a little bit, and then just kill them. At my performance point, I have yet to be able to reliably iframe anything in this game at all, period. So Valda is very, very low win rate against her. Iron Wang, very, very low win rate against him. You know, like Yue Shan, any of the Transformers, just, you can't do anything about it. So I didn't understand all that when I first got into the game, though, right? And I thought, oh, we're going to have a little bit of ping problems. Well, I played Diablo 2 competitively quite a lot, and that was a game where projectiles, even in single player, due to the client-server structure, always spawn desynced because they spawn on different frames. So that's why Bone Spirits will just hit you from fucking nowhere and you never see them. They're just completely desynced because they have tracking. So they bring out that desync a lot more. But that's just like an example of how bad the netcode performance was in that game. I played Halo and Halo Custom Edition on the PC for a long time. And I was a very high level player. And that's a game where you had to lead players on the best servers by 2 to 3 player spaces ahead of them. Just doing little back and forth movements and stuff like that in that game would throw the prediction all over the place. The pistol was the most powerful weapon still, but it was just absolutely fucked. Oh, my daughter is messaging me. I have a daughter. I have a few daughters, actually, and some sons. So this is the other thing that can happen in Naraka is you can inherit children. And that happens a lot. So, like I was saying, yesterday, I guess, before my daughter showed up. I don't remember what I was saying. All I know is that I had a few things I wanted to say. And, holy shit, I did it! The double uppercut. So this is not going to be a very short video. It's not going to be a very structured video. I'm just going to go through a bunch of the things that I've been taught over the years that I've picked up on my own. A few of the, I'm so bad at inputs. Holy shit. The reset training ground did not exist until somewhat recently. The training ground is only kind of partly useful because my ping is so high and my FPS is so low, and the training ground doesn't really accurately reflect that. But even in the training ground, there is not really a lot that is consistent with the real game world because everyone in the game world has ping. And the bot, of course, is server side, so it has 0 ping, which even encountering someone like Immortal, whoever with like 20 ping, that ping is still going to basically get added onto yours. And since they become server authoritative in that respect, most of what you try to do is just not going to work. Most people are going to be animating faster than you at my FPS. My FPS in training goes up to like 180, 200, depending on which way the camera's facing. Which, by the way, you would think that putting your camera at the sky or whatever would actually give you the highest FPS, but it doesn't. At least not for me. So the FPS drops pretty much have nothing to do with the GPU for me, because 7900 XT is not going to be put on load by Naraka. I don't even think it goes up to 60%. So I am running on DirectX 11 right now. DirectX 11 is very, very stuttery for me. Around last year, the some patch came out that basically made DirectX perform terribly. It just constantly stuttered. The issue I have is DirectX 12. I was using that for a long time, but then mysteriously DirectX 12 would stop hooking with OBS, and that's when I started casting replays for lab. So I was having problems where we would be crashing because the replays are very unstable, and then DirectX 12 would not hook with OBS anymore. So I had to use DirectX 11 for the replays, and it worked reasonably well, but the game itself is extremely stutter heavy. So if you're running on something like a 7900 XT, you don't have to worry about DirectX 12. The FPS is basically the exact same for me. If you're running on an older GPU, then DirectX 12 may not work as well, but the vast majority of people who are looking into this game have top-of-the-line systems, X3Ds, and so on. Getting FPS out of the game is very, very challenging if you're not on an X3D. There is a lot of snake oil peddled around for so-called optimizations and stuff like that. And, well, in my experience, they're all bullshit. There's a lot of BIOS tweaks and stuff like that. And what they basically do is they turn off the idling behavior for the CPU that prevents the computer from using electricity when it's idle. And after having fairly exhaustively tested this myself, it offered no FPS gains in Naraka whatsoever. It did change the latency reports on some third-party programs that do not even support Windows 10 properly. And it had no impact on Naraka whatsoever. It did result in the system running a lot hotter and running with a lot more power while it's not in use. So basically, all the negatives, none of the benefits whatsoever. So I'm just going to show my settings really briefly here, and I'll talk very briefly about them. I haven't done extensive testing on the individual settings, but I have fooled with them a little bit. The filter is actually tied to the built-in chromatic aberration of Naraka, and it's all tone mapping with change. You can even see it in the screenshots. You notice how the plants change position? That's actually due to the distortion and the tone chromatic aberration. So 24 Entertainment, quite unprofessional, having built-in chromatic aberration you otherwise can't remove. Don't know why, but it's eye strain hell. Naraka is definitely very hard on the eyes. If you ever played Naraka for a while, you start getting like this headache and your eyes start hurting, it's because of the chromatic aberration. For me, it only takes a few minutes. I have to kind of fight through that, which leads to me getting a lot of fatigue. Using VSync in Naraka, well, you don't really want to limit your frames because Naraka's frame rate determines the animation speed. Temporal, which is disgusting, or FXA, which is disgusting. Motion blur, nobody uses that. It's eye strain, it looks terrible. Graphics enhancement, you don't need to use this under any circumstances. And unless you're on a very low-end system, then FSR might help you a little bit. The NVIDIA version, I've never seen anything good come out of that. The anti-lag, I honestly don't think this does anything at all. Period. Everybody uses OBS, and nobody I know buys NVIDIA cards anyway, so I can't comment about the NVIDIA highlights. Sounds like something that actually just... If this is not stored in RAM, it's going to be kind of hard on your hard drive to be recording non-stop. Because that's basically what it is. It's constantly recording, and then when you tell it not to, you have a snapshot of the past recording. So this sound, the description's a little different on this one though. Automatically generate, because trusting AI to do stuff is fantastic. So modeling accuracy, I have on lowest. This does actually impact FPS even though it shouldn't. Don't know why. Very possibly due to the culling algorithm within the game that does not seem to work very well. Tessellation, same thing. Effects, actually, there are very, very little things in the way of special effects in Naraka. It is very, very, very low on effects. But this was actually the biggest FPS gain for me, was turning this down to low. I gained about 5 to 10 FPS doing that. And that makes no sense at all. Like, none. Period. There is more going on with any individual creature in my Unreal 5 project than anything within Naraka, period. There's just not much VFX in this game. So this is controlling something else. And something very wrong is being done. Textures should not have any FPS impact whatsoever. I have this on high, but Naraka is a very low resolution game normally, so this really doesn't make that big of a difference, but at least you don't look like Fortnite. Shadows is probably normally one of the most intensive FPS things you can have in a game. Naraka, not really, but we have it down anyways. The volumetric lighting, again, post-processing. So there's a lot of visual bugs you're going to get on low. Some people prefer to run on medium so they don't see them. I am a very, very low FPS player because of the CPU, so I'm trying to steal as much as I can. I have screen space reflections on medium because the water turns into pure puke on low, but it's screen space reflections. It's never going to look good. Anti-aliasing is set to low, even though we have it off. Post-processing, kind of exactly the same thing as the effects, is turning it to low helped FPS for some reason. Unfortunately, this does not turn off chromatic aberration and other post-processing filters. So that's actually kind of what I was hoping, is setting that to lowest would get rid of those, but it doesn't. And the light has very, very little effect on most of the game. Audio, I have the mic volume set to 0. I have voice chat for other players set to 100, but I don't actually hear them. So, open mic, this tends to default to on in shitty games, and you don't want that on. You don't want that on. You don't want people knowing that you're yelling at your mom because of girls over the internet and how they were stolen from you, even though they're way too old for you, and how you're throwing a temper tantrum and sending them phone calls and shit like that. You don't want them to know about that. That would be super embarrassing if somebody blasted that over stream. You probably want to turn off the bass voice because text-to-speech is usually on. You definitely want to get off the English voice. There's a few heroes that have okay English voices in this, like apparently Terragan has a decent voice. I haven't actually heard it in English. And Viper, but most of them, yeah. Bindings. So I bind the unarmed to the Alt key. That would be sheath weapon. There could be some improvements to the bindings in this. I've tried to change the counter button to other things, but my fingers hurt a lot. G is kind of a far way to reach for that. What's interesting about Naraka is there is 2 different ways to parry, and one of them is called crossing, which is using both of your mouse buttons. These still, in certain cases, have actually different frame timings, depending on which hotkey you use. And for the longest time, all of them were different, in that using a button, the singular parry button, was actually significantly slower on the wind-up. And this makes no sense, because they're literally just 2 different inputs for the same function in a reasonably programmed game. I mean, even in an amateurly programmed game, the laziest developer possible is just going to plug the 2 inputs into the same function, so he doesn't have to make the same function. Having different parry timings depending on the input suggests not only is the functions different, the animations it's referencing and their timings and notifies are also all different. That makes no sense at all. Welcome to Naraka Bladepoint. That's the tip of the iceberg. It only gets worse from here. Nobody uses controller. I don't really mess around too much with the buttons here, except for tree climbing. Trees in this game tend to snatch onto me, so I put that on hold so they stop snatching me, because trees and walls work very differently for scale rushing in this game. Trees require you to hold the button to attack to get a scale rush out of a blue, whereas walls and everything else do not work that way. So I set it so that I would never attach to a tree, because attaching to a tree has killed me numerous times in this game. You do want to turn on ceiling interaction. You may not want to walk along the ceiling, but you want to be able to scale rush off of it. Shadow Swipe Blizzard doesn't exist anymore, by the way. If you are low FPS and high ping like I am, Justina's magnetism from this does not work that well at all. If you're doing a lot of spectating and refereeing, you might want to look at this. Come down here. So for the red dots, I set this to extreme or higher, and I do everything I can to remove notifications. I do not need people telling me about anything in a game, period. Alright, so some general information. When I was first introduced to Naraka, I was introduced to the gameplay of Mike and Panda Man. And, of course, mobility is the big thing that comes up, because Naraka is what I would call a high maintenance mobility game. It has a lot of grinding when it comes to the movement. You have to constantly be putting in inputs all over the place to keep up with the movement, because the base movement speed is very slow compared to what you can be doing through the various dashes and all this other shit. A lot of which comes down to a lot of series of highly arbitrary repetitive actions that you need in order to catch up with or interact with other players, or try to resist them interacting with you. For example, holding the blue to deal with grapple staggers. Although in most cases I find that due to the ping and FPS differences, people are able to grapple faster than me and stagger me no matter what my glyph settings are. So get used to that behavior, because it happens fucking non-stop, where I will grapple someone and they will instantly grapple me before I even get to move, and I never get to escape their grapple ever. But they always get to escape mine, even when they're standing still and not doing anything, much less focusing. So expect a lot of things to not make sense if your performance point is looking a little bit around mine, 100 to 140 tops FPS and 70 to 80 to 90 or plus ping. Most of the game's not going to make much sense. But the thing about Naraka is a lot of it doesn't make sense, even when you don't think about ping at all. For example, did you know that when you parry, you actually create extra invisible collision a distance in front of you? Imagine as if a big square is appearing in front of me, probably the size of my character, if not even larger, plus the longsword extends. It also appears a significant distance underneath of you and above you, but underneath of you especially. I have a nice recording of a guy parrying me from like 30 feet in the air. Naraka's collision is absolutely crazy. When you look at something like the longsword blue, do not look at it as if it has a wave of collision. That kind of a collision shape doesn't exist in most games. It has a square. It's a giant square. And what I have found when it comes to Naraka's collision is a lot of things have little collision underneath of it, but quite a bit of collision above it. So when you try to use something like the longsword blue, it's very strange, because a lot of the times you can't hit shit that's underneath of it, but you can hit shit above it, and you will get hit by shit above you constantly. And it's really strange. One of the other things that's not very obvious about the collision is when you parry, again, you can parry stuff that's outside of your range. So give me a second to set this up. So katana is one of the more obvious ones you can think of, but you can stand outside the range of the katana and you can parry it. So basically, Naraka's system has nothing to do with parrying at all. It's not a parry system like you would think in the vast majority of games, where you need to be in the midst of something to parry it. Naraka is not like that. Naraka is a game where the optimal position to parry something is to be outside of it, which means that the vast majority of the time you're going to see people use iframes to cover their escape and move out of it. But that's not so easy. You can see even the bot will rubber band me. That snapping of the camera and shit like that, that's ping. So one of the other interesting things about the parrying in this game is you can jump parry and it will magnetize you if you're close enough. Now, with the katana, I'm not close enough. When I get close to this dude, hang on, let me make him stop so I can show you, because... So, normally there's this white circle surrounding him, right? That is the auto lock-on. This game has a soft lock. You can turn it off. I don't recommend doing so, because so much of the game depends on it. If I'm not in range, it's not gonna act. It's not gonna lock on. When we get close, we see that white circle. It's almost impossible to see. Don't ask me why it's changing in brightness. Now, whenever I attack in any direction, it's going to attack in his direction unless I'm pushing an input away. That's something I get confused in constantly. When we are very close, we don't see it anymore, but there we are. Okay, I don't know what that other one is. That other one means something I don't remember. But when we were close enough, yeah, the jumping parrying also magnetizes. So one of the things people are going to do is they're going to dash past you and either hit you, depending, like if you're using a Greatsword and you're holding stone form, it's actually possible to dash past them and knock them out of it. Don't ask me why I hit F. Or what is very commonly the case is dash past you and parry. Now, this is not... I've barely even... This is like super advanced shit I've barely even tried to do. Now, it's normally the soft lock will allow you to just magnetize onto someone who goes behind you, right? But if you're already in the animation, a high FPS player can cut through that animation using the iframes from the dodge and then parry you from behind. Even if they don't get the parry because the distance is off or it's one of the attacks that does not give you the enough collision behind you, you're still going to be safe. So a lot of the times the only answer to dealing with certain blues up close is to cross them. You can also do shit like there is shit like using the attack to magnetize you back in and then parrying as well, which is like, that's hyper advanced shit. Because it's a lot of inputs to do a very short amount of time. And I can barely even try to do it against a bot. Against a player, it'll never happen. Now, you can't really tap dodge this because the parry does not come out as fast. You heard right. Naraka has different dashes. In fact, Naraka, for reasons inexplicable, has 3 different dashes and dodges. For... I don't know what the fuck they were smoking. So, you have the mid dodge, as it is called. With no input, you push shift. As far as I understand, mid dodge has the highest iframes. You'll notice you roll if you double tap. The roll also has iframes. I'm told that the double is pure iframes. I haven't tested it myself. You have the tap dodge, which is if you have an input, you push it once, but this tends to make you roll as well. So, yeah. The interesting thing about tap dodging is, generally speaking, when you tap dodge twice, you will roll. But sometimes, as you saw, I got an extra. I think it rolls when you're sprinting or something. You're normally going to see this when you're holding blue or in neutrals. Dodge, dodge. That gives you... I don't know if you can actually catch that because I've seen some really insane things like people tap dodging through Zai's ultimate multiple times amongst other sorts of nonsense. It is FPS dependent. The amount of iframes you get, the responsiveness and everything like that is dependent on your FPS. And but a lot of the times when you attempt to dodge twice with tap dodge, you'll get a roll instead. Now, there's a little bit of a problem here as well, which is the window between tap dodge and the hold dodge, which is to hold the dodge. It looks visually identical to tap dodge. And then we roll again. Very, very inconsistent. The system is extremely inconsistent and very, very hard to predict of what exactly is going to happen sometimes. The difference between the two is very, very small in terms of how much you hold down the keys. See, for a very long time, I think over a year, I didn't know that tap dodge was even really a thing. Or I knew that it was a thing, but I wasn't really sure why I wasn't able to get it. And the reason why I started kind of looking into this whole thing is because fist blades is a specific weapon that uses tap dodge. Now, normally, when you hold dodge, you don't get a lot out of it. But as you can see, if you tap dodge, it holds and charges you into a blue. And you can do this a number of times. I think like 3 times is the maximum. And this does also give you iframes. Nebula showed me that it is quite possible to use this, especially at high FPS, low ping. The fist blades can be used to navigate most attacks in the game very, very comfortably and give you catches very, very easily, even more easily than you might normally with the other weapons, even at that thing. And this is the problem I had is using a specific jade, which was Clown Weaver, was I would charge it and I would dodge and I wouldn't get it. And I'm like, okay, so what the fuck's the problem that I'm not getting this? The problem is I'm actually pushing the dodge too long and I'm getting what is called a hold dodge. The hold dodge is what allows you to cancel into things like, for example, a blue, which in theory can give you very, very few dead frames, where you will get a iframe into a hold. It should protect you from a lot of catches. You don't want to push the hold too quickly because it'll actually cancel the boolean for the dodge state. Maybe with fist blades it's not the best example of this, but you'll get some walking frames where you're no longer in hold or dodge, and you can be caught during that. But I noticed that with fist blades that I was not getting the dodge a lot of the times, and this had problems, and it's because I was pushing the shift key for too long. I was not getting a tap dodge. So that was my first encounter with that when I really started researching that. And it took me a long time to figure that out. Because you can just quickly hop into Clown Weaver and it is very, very difficult to parry if you are not low ping and reasonably high FPS. This can easily troll you. I mean, even if your ping is as low as like 40 and your FPS is like 200 plus, this can still troll you. I have a clip in the opening of my definitive July 2026 video of Lab getting trolled by that, and he has extremely good ping and performance, and this just went right through his parry because it's instant collision. You just, if once you're tapped, that's it, and it creates a huge cone pretty much instantly, or a giant rectangle. So that's when I discovered there is a difference between tap dodge and hold dodge, and it's very, very relevant if you want to play fist blades, because you do not get that weave into the blue if you are not using tap dodge. It does not work on hold at all. If you hold, you don't get it. Which is really, if you're in a team fight, this happened a lot when I had Clown Weaver in our trios or duos matches, is my partner would be occupied with an opponent, and I think, well, I'll just weave in and use Clown Weaver and catch him with that. Well, I would weave in, and then nothing would happen. I'd be like, bruh. That's why. So very, very important. Similarly, like I showed you, you can't tap dodge or mid dodge into a parry, right? You have to hold dodge into the parry. Right? And again, this is really the main way you're supposed to be doing something called spacing, which is when an opponent uses a blue, you want to put space between you and them so that you're not in the threat of the blue, but your parry collision is in there, and it's going to be different for every weapon and every attack. Some are much more easy to parry than others. Some are just an absolute shit show, like the fucking Whipsword vertical is fucking horrendous. That is this one. This is one of the most annoying things in the game to parry. It is basically instantaneous collision. It does not follow the weapon like you think it does. If you're trying to parry it from the side, it is very unreliable. I think from what I've read, the ideal way to parry this is to cross behind them. Like that. Which is going to be a hold dodge into a focus that then brings you close enough to get the parry in. Again, very, very advanced stuff. I've only very, very recently been told about this thanks to Mucky. You have to let go of your movement input when you're doing the focus. Otherwise, you might not get sucked into them, right? Like, this is what I said, that removing the soft lock may cause you some problems is that sometimes I get shoved out and I don't get magnetized. If I'm holding an input, I might go away from them when they're channeling this. You want to get behind them. Now, I can try to do this with a bot. I've never tried to do this before, but I have a feeling it's going to be a disaster. Because you see, to even try to get the, you pretty much have to perfect time that, which against the bot, it's not that bad, right? Against a player, it's fucking horrible. And trying to get behind the bot, as I discovered with the katana, is also really hard. So typically you want to like tap dodge, and I think you can tap dodge. Yeah, you see, I could even like tap dodge through it, right? As a tap dodge gives you more iframes than the hold dodge, which is really major. And if you're really good at timing, yeah, you can actually go back and forth between attacks, which is pretty important for a lot of shit. But if you're gonna try to parry it, that's not gonna work. So just like accept your iframes and whatever. But yeah, definitely trying to get behind, like even against the bot, trying to get behind them is really difficult. So normally what you would like to do, if you can't get behind them, is try to hold dodge into a parry, but you need to be at a specific distance, right? Like that. And again, I'm pretty sure there's like frames there that you can be hit. But there, it took that many tries, but that's the way to do it. Is you need your collision to intersect the weapons. Some weapons have collision that's basically going to show up behind the character. Right, now I need a specific distance for that. I need a specific timing so I don't come out of my dodge when he is attacking and in the location of it. But I need to intersect it with my parry collision, right? So a lot of people find this one very, very difficult to parry. What most people tell me, like Hypernova, etc., is when you see them charging blue, you put distance. You don't stay close to them. The second you see them go blue, you walk away. Or what is more often the case is they repair dodge away. And I've tried to do this. I have. But it really doesn't work. Please. Yeah, those are some long-ass parry frames, especially against a bot. So a lot of people would say is like, you're supposed to like, I don't know if it's like hold dodge. It might just be like tap dodge. And I mean, I've seen it more like using this to navigate a lot, right? Like dodge into repair into dodge. And it's very heavy on stamina, evidently. But, you know, if you wanted to, like, say, for example, get away from this dude. That's the main way you're going to do it. Of course, if you have no stamina, or if you time the input. I know I'm doing the input terribly wrong in that. I'm still trying to work on this too. And like I'm hitting H instead of G. The jump parry maybe gives you it a little bit more easily. A lot of people like to jump parry just because out of habit. The jump parry, of course, with the magnetism will suck you in. So say, for example, if I was to try to parry beside him, I might get it, right? But there is a small possibility that if I can time it right, like depending on the weapon, it might suck me in. See, like I didn't get it when I was right next to him, right? The timing is really weird. Just goes to show that even though there's like a lot of ping issues with this game, the learning curve just for the inputs and shit and the timing is still insane. Because people get behind me with this all the time. And I can't do it with the bot at all. Like it just hits me, it just snaps me out every single time. Like I'm trying to dodge this and it's just sucking me in. Like almost like the whole dodge doesn't even give me anything. Of course, you can do that with tap dodge, right? That's generally the safer way. A lot of people have told me, especially like Daeldir says, I don't like parrying. It's too much of a coin flip, it's gonna work, especially when you integrate the ping and shit like that, right? So the higher end players are typically just gonna repair dodge this. Which frankly I don't know why I can't do. But I would say at least like 50% of the players on the NA server can instantly get behind me and parry this exact attack. And I haven't been able to do it a single time across many attempts. Many attempts. So I try to react parry because that's what's in my blood, right? But you've seen it many times just in my videos is like people just end up behind me. They're just suddenly behind me just like that. And I have no idea how they're fucking doing it. I mean, how the fucking people in the server are able just to... There! I finally did it. That was I'm pretty sure that was a tap dodge. I can't even tell you what dodge it was. Like, this is the shit I really struggle with. Is like, everything related to the dodge timings, moving in and out of shit and getting those parries feels so difficult, if not incredibly inconsistent. But this is how you're supposed to do it. And but people get behind, like they get behind, right? So that you're not like running into this shit constantly. They just get behind. Mucky does it all the time, and I have no idea. He's showing me his inputs and everything like that, and like I have no fucking idea, dude. The whole dodge feels like it's absolutely worthless. You want to be able to do this double tap dodge instead. But the timing on that is extremely specific. It's obviously a lot easier when you have more frames. Because basically you're essentially trying to dodge to the side and then use your holds to snap back on, possibly using your camera as well to change your movement. But I don't do any shit like that. I am just pure, just try to parry if you're gonna try to parry, because the dodging in and out, like I just showed you, I still haven't figured that out. I've almost got 3 years in this game. I haven't the faintest clue how you get that to start being reliable. I haven't the faintest clue why the repair dodge doesn't work reliably, and everyone else can do it. I watched Immortal the other day just flying all over the map, just spamming it constantly. And I don't know how it does it. I have no idea. One of the other odd things I noticed about this game is the way the input handling works is based on notifies. So input buffering is very weird. So when your attack damage starts, if you push anything, it's queued. So watch my inputs. I attack. Now, with the longsword, that's quite a long input buffer. And it's more noticeable with the Polesword. The point I want to make is you cannot change the input buffer once it's started. You notice how I'm first putting in a parry and then an attack? However, the parry actually takes priority. So if I do an attack, and you see that's a very, very long. But if I push parry during that, the parry takes priority. The opposite is not true. So Very strange behavior. Very, very strange behavior. Even crouch is buffered. But not crouch cancel. Because it's only the one input, right? Actually, crouch. Oh, that's interesting. Dude, that's interesting. So actually, crouch and parry do override each other, but parry and attack do not. Even if you hold, it doesn't. What is interesting is that if you try to blue into a hold out of a parry, of course that doesn't work either. Wow, okay, so there are nuances to that even I didn't know. Is parry always takes priority over attack, but the crouch will actually take priority over the parry. Which, if they're throwing certain horizontal attacks, maybe getting in the crouch is better than being locked up in the parry animation for a while, right? Because then you could at least crouch attack or... If you're fast enough, you could turn it into a crouch cancel. Crouch canceling is very strange. For 2 years, I had no idea how crouch canceling was done until Immortal told me you have to hold crouch and then push it. Observe the input. It's very strange. Crouch canceling is very important because crouch canceling is the normal way you're supposed to do a combo instead of... Dude, inputs are just not my thing. Holy shit. So normally the way I do a combo is right. But that's wrong because it uses your stamina. So the stamina is that Genshin Impact S yellow circle. You don't want that to be draining when you're not using dodge, because you need it to dodge, because dodge is very expensive. And once you start getting into repair dodging, it's even more expensive. And repair dodging is not something I do because it's really fucking stupid. Like, it is straight up stupid as fuck. So basically, dodge interrupts animations. So, you know, and if you do this really quick, you can just completely interrupt your animation whenever you want. So you want to time it. Right? And remember that you don't double tap it or whatever. It takes a little bit of discipline to use. Alright? I think you have to take your, no, I'm just doing it wrong. It is not activating. I think you can't do it with hold. You have to do it with tap, so... I don't know. There is some nuances to the input. I don't do it anyways. And it's obviously unintended behavior and should be patched out because that makes no sense. Anyways, like I was saying, the crouch cancel lets you do the combo without having to use dodge. But it is such an awkward input that I can't get that very reliably at all. I've like almost never used it against a player. It's taken me about a year to figure out this double uppercut shit, and I've only managed to pull it against a player twice. And the main thing is that the inputs are really confusing, and you pretty much have to use a grapple like immediately. And I'm easily confused and will push the grapple without doing anything. So, I will commonly get stuck. I'll put that too low. I'll hit V instead of crouch or B to reset. Yeah, one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how you train out of these bad inputs, but I don't understand. I don't think you can. I'm going on 40 years old. I don't think I'll ever be able to fix it. You see, even like I have to, the crouch canceling is so awkward. I have to premeditate it. And that is enough time for the bot to get out. Not a lot of players might get out, especially the higher ping ones. But, yeah. It's just such an awkward input. You just gotta be at this constantly. But I don't know, man. I think I'm at a mental state where training is not gonna help. So when I was first introduced to the game, it was obviously through the mobility that I made the most note. There is nothing special about Naraka's combat whatsoever. It's basically just like any other fighting game where the vast majority of the combat is expressed through quick time events. There's nothing exciting about combos. Iframes are uninteresting. The parry system needs to be completely reworked from the ground up. The input system needs to be reworked from the ground up. Things like this crouch canceling and repair dodging, 2-1-1 and shit like that has no place in a competitive game whatsoever. Just the inputs are all fucked. If you want to have canceling in it, okay, but everything should work the same. And the mobility is more interesting because it kind of reminded me of Warframe with additional options in it. The problem with things like Warframe is, again, because of all the arbitrary text where you have to do all this movement to get around at any reasonable speed, it's a lot of button pushes, which is a lot of fatigue and a lot of hardware wear and tear. So that's kind of like, it's nice to have mobility in the game, but Naraka definitely goes into the point where it's awkward as fuck when it comes to having to constantly do it. It's very hard on the fingers, and I have arthritis, so that just makes it a lot worse. So definitely after a session of Naraka, I feel, especially my left hand, a lot of pain. So you'll definitely want to make sure you have a keyboard that is comfortable for your hand over very prolonged periods of time. So wave dashing is, or scale rush, I always call it wave dashing. Wave dashing is a Smash Brothers thing, I think. I've never really played Smash Brothers, I don't know. It's probably one of the most important things to learn because it goes in the direction of the camera. It's useful for chasing. It's useful for mix-up. Not every surface allows you to connect to it. So there's a degree of inconsistency where some shit just does not allow you to. Yeah. One of the other odd things that will confuse me a lot is you have to use the side buttons to actually fasten to a wall. You won't just fasten onto it otherwise if it's only a side. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But you have to get in your muscle memory to push the side buttons if you're trying to go on the wall when you're jumping to it or whatever. And there's a lot to learn about the really awkward mantling system in this game. It's obviously some prototype that's never really been tested. It has a lot of bugs associated with it, where if you try to mantle up certain ledges, you can get stuck in an infinite loop. Trees will snatch you out of the air. The tree branches will snatch you out of the air and have you hanging out in the middle of the air, amongst other things. It's really awkward. So expect a fight that controls a lot in this game. And there's a lot of cases where you think it's going to grab on and it doesn't. And when you do grab on and you look at it, I'm floating in the air. Because the collision is very jank, and each level has its own different kinds of cliff meshes and shit like that that are really fucked up. So Hypernova has a good video on the whole scale rushing thing, and does not talk in depth about the whole locomotion system though. The slide jumping thing gets you a little bit of movement. Obviously an angled surface will give you a little bit more. So you kind of mix that in. You maybe do the slide jumps when you're not using your stamina for whatever reason. right? This is definitely a muscle memory thing, right? Like, this is whatever. Now, with some weapons, the longsword's one you can span the horizontal on to move. The nunnies is the right, hold into right. Dual blades, dual halberds is hold into right. And the Polesword and Greatsword is horizontal and vertical half charge respectively. You're taking advantage of the root motion. Now, what is interesting about this game that I noticed is the root motion does change depending on your inputs. Always being sick is such great fun. One of the mistakes I commonly make is I try to dash out of someone and then hold when they're holding a blue, and I try to prepare for a blue, but the magnetism brings me back in. Right? And that's just because I'm holding the back button. When I hold the input, the extra root motion is flinging me forward. When in reality, I want to go back. Because if he's holding a blue, right? I want to do that, but preferably I want to be from that optimal range where I'm slightly outside the blue's collision. But if I hold the blue to do that, it's magnetizing me back in, right? So that extra root motion, that gets me hit a lot. When in reality, if I didn't hold the blue at all, or if I knew to take my finger off the input, then I get to hold the blue in case he comes in with a white to try to catch my dash. There's a small chance that holding the blue will protect me from the white. But when I've got the input on, it doesn't matter if I'm in the soft lock range or not. It doesn't matter which input I'm holding. It's giving me that extra root motion. And each weapon is a little bit different, but all of them give you a little bit of extra movement if you have any input in. So this game is a lot of policing your inputs. It's a lot of policing your inputs, right? You get into the habit of you want to hold because even despite my performance, if they're a little slow and trying to catch me with a white or whatever, if I'm holding, it'll protect me from that. In the off chance they're slow on it. Usually their FPS is too good and they'll be right on that. But at other times it helps me get in there too, right? Like if I dash in, it's a little bit of extra movement without using a second dash. Right? So there is no guide. I've never seen any guides for this. There's no guides for this. There's no, information I've seen on this kind of shit, or the logic of like, when is it a good idea to do this? When is it a good idea to do that? I've seen a couple of videos like the one from Long Notes that mentions the whole extra parry collision and shit like that. I've never seen any of them that talk about actual neutral theory. Just the odd one that's like, oh, if he's charging blue, you should, if you're slower, then maybe you should dash out or whatever. And if he's slower, you can try to parry him, some basic stuff, but there's not really a lot of like actual neutral theory. Probably in China. There's a lot of information in China. If you know Chinese, you can head over to Douyin, and there's quite a few videos talking about certain interactions and other stuff like that. Kind of like we expected out of the Koreans with Brood War. But when it comes to the English-speaking world, most people prefer to gatekeep. So it's hard to even find information. Like, I've certainly never seen anything that mentions this root motion. And, I mean, you can discover that on yourself, but chances are most people who hear this don't even know what root motion even means. Well, now you know. Root motion is movement built into an animation. So when I mantle, it's an animation, right? That jump up, whatever, the climbing animation, falling down onto the ground, it's all movement built into the animation. And when it plays the animation, it goes to the movement. And that means it's moving the collision capsule and everything related. You remember how in the Mr. Black collaboration, how Lab got us behind the TV by jumping behind the TV off the ledge and doing an air attack, and you would just pop through it? That's because the air attack has some kind of root motion in it that is moving the collision of the character. This would cause it to intersect or something with the TV collision, and then it would decollide you through it. So that is very strange. What I actually do in my project for this stuff is I just change the gravity. No messing around with the movement state or the collision, because those lead to weird behavior, like decolliding through a giant TV. So evidently, each weapon has different distances and wind up for their scale rushing and shit like that. What I tend to do a lot when I'm idling or when I'm talking to my daughter or my son, or when I've got other shit going on or whatever, is I'll just head on down in a peng line. I'll just scale rush around in there and try to avoid getting fucked by the walls or whatever, right? I don't know why I had a dagger in one part and one in the other. So I'm very bad at doing this in an actual game. If someone's chasing me, I don't pay any attention and I fuck up everything. So my muscle memory is still a couple years off from being reliable. And you see, I still got the problem where I try to go into dash. Instead, I start crouching and crawling around. That happens a lot too. TY Birdman. And, yeah. So, again, gotta use the side and mouse buttons to get on the walls there. Very important to work this rotation of being able to go between the walls very quickly down. Because when it comes to an actual game, you don't often have time to premeditate and think about what you're gonna do. It needs to be something that's down in the muscle memory. 90% of the game is muscle memory. Every single high-level player I've talked to, Daeldir, Hypernova, Immortal, etc., they say a huge amount of it comes down to just muscle memory. Now, obviously, they're younger, fitter, firmer than I am, and their brains aren't filled with the kind of baggage that mine have got. So they can learn this stuff a lot faster than I can. They can perform it more reliably than I will ever be able to. I'll never be able to do this stuff reliably ever again like I could 20 years ago. But it's still something you need to, you know, if you want to play this game, you gotta at least get some of it down. And so Peng lag gives you a little bit more space to run around. It doesn't have that stupid vignette effect that the training room does where it darkens the side of the screens and it strains your eyes. You don't get that kind of shit in here. So this is where you can practice a bunch of your locomotion, shit like that. Another thing that I was taught is there's two different ways to charge blues in the air. Depending on what you do. If you come off a ledge, you'll need to attack and dodge into something. And then that lets you blue. Like this. Like, can let you drop on someone, say for example in Yang, that's a big one if you've got Aurora Burst or Merciless Havoc. Just beware higher level players, when they see you go up in there, they're going to be watching you and thinking, oh, he's going to do a blue coming down. I better parry just before he gets near me, so my huge parry collision will just fuck him up. Just be careful, because he might do that instead. You got to make sure to get your dodge down. I thought there was a second way to do that, but I forgot what it was. Of course, high-level players just do a 2-1-1. They get out of the whole needing to dodge thing entirely, and it's a lot more reliable for them. But 2-1-1 is an extremely complicated input. I've only ever managed to do it a single time. It is FPS dependent. So if you're able to do that, fantastic. I can't tell you how, because I haven't the faintest fucking idea. A lot of the inputs in this game are confusing as all fuck. They just make no sense to me whatsoever. I have a dagger out in here, but I don't in the actual... I don't know about that. So a couple other little tidbits related to the locomotion thing. You might be wondering, how do I stop myself from getting hooked on shit like windowsills or rooftops, whatever? So I'm like trying to chase someone. And I don't really want to have to police my inputs that much. I don't want to have to get stuck on shit. How do I stop myself from getting stuck on shit without changing shit? It's to attack. You can't mantle or whatever if you're attacking. So if I want to not get stuck in this, I'm going to jump attack. Just make sure you jump high enough. So if I want to like not get stuck, if I want to go through this fucking window, it's really quite a pain in the ass because you're just going to do all these animations and whatever. I don't want to do all that shit. So just slide and attack. Slide, jump, and attack. Just make sure you gotta do some practice on this to figure out the timings for certain shit. Otherwise, you might just get stuck and waste a lot of time instead, or it won't go through because you got too close. So, one of the things that Hypernova's video shows that if you spam jump while going over a window, you can cancel that animation. Just hit it the one time. But wave dashing, anything with attack is better and more reliable. Just beware, you know, the duration of your wave dash, which weapon you're using, stuff like that. Evidently, some weapons are better at dashing than others, and the attack length that you're using for them is going to greatly, you know, change the strategies you used to get into shit. Well, the Greatsword and Polesword give you apparently a little bit more airtime. Yeah, so this one has no upward motion associated with it. It just kind of freezes you in the air, so it's a little bit easier. This one here has very slight motion. So, this is something you'll need to practice. Or else you do that. Because I haven't really practiced it at all. Mantling system in this game is pretty fucked. However, going around the corner is a little bit easier. Once you've figured out the rooftop stuff and you've got that in, you can also make use of rooftops. So you might have to like push your camera into there, orient your camera so that you magnetize. One of the problems I have is I end up attacking before I actually contact. And I don't have an input active, so I never actually attach to the wall. So consistently attaching to the wall and scale rushing out has been a very big problem for me. So if you watch CN players wave dash around these walls and shit, it's gonna look like they have some kind of hack going on because they go in and out of windows all over the place. And it just seems to be absolutely impossibly easy. Well, when you have that much frames, the movement actually is way more easy to do. If you have like 300, 400 frames or 240 at the NBPL cap, suddenly a lot of things become way easier to do. Moving around players, predicting their actions and stuff like that suddenly becomes infinitely more responsive. Even if you're watching a stream, like a 60 or 90 FPS stream, if that player is running at 240 plus FPS, you're going to see a movement that looks slower and more readable and more reactable than what you were dealing with at my frame rate, for example. So it looks completely different. And, you know, like watching like Hypernova or whatever, it's just like, this is a completely different game. Right? It's completely different. Now it looks very manageable. But then you go in and other players like snapping in and out of animations really fast, doing things that are just fucking physically impossible for you to do. Just getting past the open gap scale rushing is unreliable. Right? And the whole thing just feels really strange. And you know it's not your monitor because you're watching a stream. And it looks fine on there. But in your end, yeah. So it's very, very hard for me to like watch a person's stream like Hypernova or whoever. You know, people will say, well, watch high-level streams. That's how you learn how to play. Well, it isn't. Because they're playing a different game than you are. Because their ping is lower, their FPS is much higher. The way the game looks, feels, and plays, and what mechanics are available to them, it's a completely different game between the two. It's totally different. So you can't just watch a high-level player play if you're at my performance point. It doesn't do you any good at all. You can't do the kind of mind games that they do. You can't hold check people like Hypernova can. You can't play neutrals like Hypernova can. Doesn't matter what your skill level is, the way that you're interacting with the game is fundamentally different and castrated if you're at my performance point. So for example, I can't do things like half charge out of a soft combo. You're normally supposed to be able to hold a blue if you're being hit by a soft combo. For example, somebody just whacking you with crouch cancel horizontal over and over again. This is not a true combo after the second hit. You're supposed to be able to half charge out of bullshit like this. But if you're high ping, you can't. You actually have to double tap dodge. So, for example, I don't know if the bot will do this. This is one of the most important things that Daeldir taught me during my early training with him. Very, very, very important. And we're going to see if I can get the bot to do this, because I might not be able to. But, let's see. So it'd be horizontal tap, horizontal tap, horizontal tap, horizontal tap. I think this is it. I think. Let's try. So normally, if I try to dodge out of this using one dodge, now with a bot it's easier, right? But if the player has like even like 20-30 ping, I can't actually dodge out of this. It will lock me in. There is actually a second dodge with different iframes. If you double tap dodge, you'll get out. No, the bot's not doing it at the same speed and shit like that as players are doing. But it's something I ran into a lot when I first started. It's just crouch canceling between attacks, particularly with the hang sword, and just hitting you constantly with it. And then, like, you know, a single dodge would not get out. It would not break this, even though it isn't a true combo. I couldn't get out of it. Daeldir did it to me, and I said, you know, I can't get out of this. And he said, there's a different dodge with different iframes. You have to double tap it while you're being hit to buffer that special dodge. Otherwise, you will not get out. Now, a lot of good players will catch that dodge anyways because they animate so much faster than me. So they can just like instantly snap into a catch out of that dodge. But, you know, like lower level players, it gives you a chance to reset a little bit. There's a lot of interactions I have that are really fucked. For example, Tessa has this buff here when she uses her F or when she uses her alt. And that buff will stagger enemies when they hit you. In theory, it's supposed to let you be able to reset. But because everybody else has lower ping and animates faster than me, they are staggered for less than I am. So as long as they stagger me, it doesn't matter if they get staggered too, they will recover faster and they get a free combo out of it. So it's basically a nerf to her when I play her, because I can't do anything with him. Immortal told me that this is the case for him too, is you will lose priority on that stagger, and that's why nobody plays her. And to prove his point, he switched to her, and I was able to kill him. So I've also seen this interaction on CN servers as well, so she's just kind of fucked. Yeah, this is not a character that people play in solos. Speaking of which, with Tessa, I might talk about the heroes a little bit at some point, but I don't know most of the heroes. Nobody uses the V2 because it doesn't fucking do anything. it does very, very, very little damage. So I've got a gold weapon, right? And the bot doesn't have any resist jades. It does like no damage. 200 damage. 200 damage. Wowee. That dude, that's so crazy. By the way, her meteor with no shades does way more damage. 400, double the damage. And you can't escape it if it hits. You can iframe Tessa's ult, which everybody and their mom, except for me, can do. And you can remove it after you've been hit. With Tara's, all you have to do is land it. It only has one state of failure, and it does double the damage of Tessa's V2. Tessa's V2 literally has no reason to exist. And if you see people using it, they don't know how to play Tessa, plain and simple. Bots will iframe the both of them like crazy, by the way. I just wanted to get that out of the way because I see the odd person running V2 on her, and it's like, if you're gonna run V2 on Tessa, you may as well just run Tara. She's just better. She doesn't have a combo breaker, but the damage is better. Especially in like duos or trios, just run her if you're gonna run V2. Because she's just way better, way stronger. And it's an easier ult to work around. Because you can peel so much more easily with it. So, because I can't do combos, I commonly use the Polesword and Greatsword. The Polesword and Greatsword, most people don't really know how to fight these weapons very well. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're good weapons. The Greatsword in particular is very, very slow to move around with unless you pick up a jade for it. The Polesword does not have that limitation. But this attack is generally a lot easier to parry than this one. This one is actually deceptively hard to parry because the collision between all the swings is not equal. Actually, I am pretty sure that this middle swing here towards the end is actually a smaller collision than the main one. So a lot of people will actually parry this a little too early, and they will get punked by that last hit. I have gotten more kills out of spamming GS horizontals than I have every other weapon in the game combined. And I have killed players in Immortal War. I have killed high-level players. I have managed to kill people that I have no right killing just by playing GS. Because only a handful of players know how to deal with it. Even if they're high ping and low latency, because I am high ping, parrying this, you only get the one chance. And if you fuck it up, this does a lot of damage. I think it's like the highest damage in the game. And you can mind game the fuck out of people by turning away, swinging around them, shit like that. I have some good clips of some fights I did against Lab and another guy. And it really was just like, I can't do anything until I switch to the GS. Of course, the GS is very predictable, and even if you manage to catch someone with it right away doing shit like this, you have to really mix up. The best advice I was ever given was put a little bit of retard in your step. So, most people when they see this blue, they're gonna be like, oh, I better parry that. And then you can get in a swing, and they're gonna wait for the follow-up blue. This one is very common, a lot of damage. They're going to try to parry that. You can hold it, and if they're not super high ping and they parry, you might be able to catch them out of that. But many people will actually dodge out of the initial swing of the vertical and then parry the second swing, which is why maybe sometimes it's better to be a little bit slower. And this follow-up, if someone tries to catch you with a white following that, depending on the timing, you can use the hold and then get in this slow. But it is very slow. A high FPS player will end up crossing that, parrying it, or just getting out of the way. But the GS has ascended to being one of my favorite weapons because I've been able to get so many kills with it that I just plainly do not deserve to have. And you don't need combo tech. You need neutrals. One of the important things to know about the heavy weapons that does make them a little bit complicated is there are two different kinds of stone form. One blocks white attacks and one blocks blue attacks. And that depends if you have attacked or not. So we will go into custom training here. And we will set our bot to horizontal. We're just going to do horizontal and then a bunch of crouches. And then we're gonna go into let's see here. We'll do that. Okay, it doesn't want to let me do it the other way, so we'll do it this way. So our bot will do blue, crouch a bunch of times, and then go into white. So if I attack and then hold, but if I try to attack into the blue normally, obviously I won't get that. But if I try to clash this, I will get the stone form. So if you have a good reason to believe they're actually going to release the blue, what you can do is you can throw in a white and then hold the follow-up. Right? You have to be careful when you're holding stone form, though, because it likes to auto-release. And the auto-release has gotten me fucked a lot of times. This isn't the best way to do this. So if you're holding it, it's going to auto-release, which means you might release when you don't intend to. God, I hate this screen effect when you're wounded. The red overlay thing. It's really annoying. I hate it so much. I like how it has to get in that one base attack. And yeah, there is like keyframes to that. So if you're just holding, you're cooked. But you can delay it. That was an actual clash as opposed to a stone form. So definitely like the GS and Polesword are all about mind games. It's all about making them think you're going to release that blue. When in reality, you can do something really cheeky. Like you can dash out, you can crouch out, you can hold between your combos, because the follow-up is so long that if they try to wipe between this, or if they dash out, you can catch. You can do things you normally can't do. You can play extremely passively. And most people, when they release this, are gonna go for the vertical. Because this vertical has like nearly instant frames. And a low ping, high FPS player is going to be able to react parry that every single time no matter what. But most people go for it because when they started, they ran into bots and Xbox players that don't parry it. Right? The horizontal blue is much slower, but its collision is a little harder to use in some cases. So if you hold that, you can get hits off of that. You can also do a basic air combo with it if you can hit them with a very slow uppercut. And the key with it is to be not predictable. The Polesword has actually been nerfed because it was too strong, which is the horizontal here has so much movement to it. And the weapon in general is largely stronger than the Greatsword. But most people use this. They run around with this. They'll try to see what you do. And then they'll come in. And then they'll swing around with it. Or, in some cases, they will swing away with it and then come in. Generally, what you're going to see is there's going to be a little bit of mind games about getting in those horizontal hits. There is a follow-up that the GS does not have in stone form, which is the tap dash into blue. A lot of people are going to look to parry this. If they see you dash out, almost 100% they're going to try to parry. It's very, very common. And I have no idea how to do that input normally. I've only very, very recently learned about it. And that did not... Interesting. Whereas you can sometimes get a vertical in instead. Now they have nerfed horizontal. Why is that not working? But they haven't nerfed this. That still does more damage. 336 versus 352. And I don't recommend releasing that one because it's very, very slow, but if they parry too early, then yeah, you can. This is a very common bread and butter, is to dash in, get that horizontal, go for this. High experienced players will always parry that. Always. Or they're going to dash out because they don't know what the follow-up's going to be. You might go for a series of rapid hits to catch, and then you're out of stamina, and they're going to just dash out or catch you afterwards. So you want to kind of be a little unpredictable. If you know your opponent isn't as experienced, like they're some console player, you can probably get away doing that. The third on the horizontal here, this combo here, this third is so slow until the swing actually comes out. This one catches people constantly. They don't expect you to use the slow attacks. This one's good too, but it's harder to land. And if you miss this, it's a while before you can dash out again. A high-level player can easily iframe that and get behind you. The main way high-level players are going to deal with the whole Polesword and Greatsword is they are going to pop stone form. And when you are in stone form, this does not work. I don't know why it's not really working. They can pop stone form and then they can actually cross behind you and get a free combo on you. Particularly with the longsword. You need the longsword to do that. Yeah, it's a little harder to get that blue stone form on the Polesword. I think that the reset for the combo window of it is a little bit shorter. So you need to like start holding the blue a little bit faster. Although the weapons have very, very similar movesets and most of them just look like copy pastes, there are some timing differences between some of them. Now, of course, the jades for these weapons are pretty important to mention, but I'm not going to really talk too extensively about jades at this point. I'm just going to mention Blistering Edge is really the big one for the Polesword. Blistering Edge obviously does all of its damage up front for the horizontal, so it's very nice to have, especially with the burn effect. However, if you are fighting on angled terrain, it is just like the longsword. It's very, very hard to hit because its collision is very similar. It's not the same collision. It feels like a little bit bigger. But if you are on angled terrain, it is so much harder to land going up or going down. Because you don't get, like... You don't get that swing. that moves you up the terrain. You don't get the locomotion. And you don't get the base reach. You can be parried on this, just like with the longsword. But depending on the ping, parrying this is actually really, really hard. I have a lot of footage of me parrying guys, and it just goes right through my parry and hits me anyways, constantly. Trios is full of people who are running like VPNs and shit, and their ping is just as bad, if not worse than mine. And when we try to fight, all bets are off. And if they have blistering edge, it's really bad. There was a zipping I ran into in Immortal War that you just could not parry this. This is all she did. Just constant. And you would see it coming and she wouldn't care because the ping made it just impossible to parry her. I have that in one of my videos. Hypernova ran into her and had similar problems even though his ping is way better. The dude's ping was still really high and it made it very hard for him to parry. The other thing I'll briefly talk about is this jade I've seen some people get confused by, even though it is very powerful, which is the Thunder Portal. Don't ask me about the name, I don't know why it's called that. Battle Stride is the stone form, or charged vertical attack. So if I use this, I can follow up with this. The blue is parryable. But if you hit someone with it, you turn into a gold focus, grab attack, that does some damage and maybe in an AoE. You can cancel it and go into a white. It's a jade you do not see used very often because it is pretty parryable and most people don't use Polesword very well. Yeah, this game is very buggy if you weren't aware, and shared animations are one of the most notoriously buggy things that exist in games. You do need to do a charged vertical for it or out of stone form, so the conditions are a little awkward to do in an actual fight, but hang on, there's science to be had here. Unity. We are in the air. And now we fell. Yeah, this game has a lot of really jank interactions in it. You better get used to them. So I'm a big fan of heavy weapons. I don't know enough about the game to claim to be that I'm any good at the neutrals, but I have definitely gotten a lot of mileage out of them. And especially in the last while, I've even managed to kill people in Immortal War. I've had them running from me because I'm killing them with the GS and they just don't know what to do about it. I've also had the most amount of success parry reacting with the Polesword and Greatsword. Despite my ping and them being, I think, like amongst the slowest parry frames, other than maybe like the nunchucks, which is kind of slow. I've had a lot of success parrying with them. Even against like wireless console players and shit. I've had like frame perfect parries all over with these weapons that I never would have gotten with a longsword, even though a longsword is faster, and I don't understand how that works. I really don't. I can't explain that. So the weapon I've really struggled the most with trying to learn recently is actually the nunchucks. Is not on? Question mark? There we go. So, obviously, dodge canceling is still very much a work in progress for me. Almost seems like you can't even crouch cancel that. So, I can't land that against bots or players. The wind up on it is a lot longer. And it doesn't seem to make a difference with a grapple or without. So, yeah, I never land that. They always get out. And that is a ping thing, I think, in particular. FPS would help a lot. But with this weapon in particular, it seems very, very hard to land that. So, something that Lab taught me is crouch canceling. So, if I am holding a blue or something like that, I can crouch and swap without releasing the mouse. And that will let me shoot a ranged weapon. So this is another form of crouch canceling, because crouch will interrupt the animation, and the next weapon will take your input. Now you can't do that when you're in the air, evidently, but this is the bread and butter of basic combos here. I keep buying that and I really don't need to, but it would be like uppercut, crouch, whatever, right? So like, well, I think you might need a 2-1-1 for this weapon swap. But it's like, yeah, I think you might need a weapon swap for that. I don't know. I was able to do it before, but I don't remember now. You might need to use the GS for it. It might look like... I don't know. I used to be able to do that combo, but I don't remember. But yeah, the crouch into shooting weapons. It's most effective with the musket because it doesn't have an aiming mode. You can do it with a cannon, but it's much slower. Maybe at a range. You can do it with the bow, but you have to remember to release. Same with the pistol as well. Now, I was told that when you start trying to learn to swap into ranged weapons and stuff like that, is the pistol's the best to do because it's a little easier to aim because it has a cluster, so at least you'll do some damage. But I have to admit, I've probably had more success with the bow and the rifle, and I'm not really sure why. But when your ping is as high as mine is, the projectiles behave very weirdly. So when you're moving around trying to get shots, I would have to do a little bit of slowdown, but you notice like the projectile is definitely like desynced, right? It does have a travel speed. There is a projectile. And hitting players with it, it may even be desynced on their end too. Who knows? But it feels... the ranged in this is very, very fucked. Which is a thing because there are ways you can do where you can like knock someone down and there are fixed positions they will land on the ground. And depending on what you're using to knock them down, which combo it is, you can get in like 1 to 3 headshots on them while they're on the ground. You just kind of like line up your cursor where they're going to be. Of course, there's a lot of Douyin videos of Liam's pokeballing people in the air and then just killing them with ranged attacks. Honestly, I'm pretty sure a lot of those are actually hacks because, yeah, there is a lot of hacks floating around this game. But it does happen in real games with real people, though, is you're going to see a lot of, like, certain combos where the people will knock you down and they'll get in a quick little bit of damage. Or they might set up for, like, you know, like a 1, 2, 3. And there's probably like a crouch cancel or something associated with that. Right? And quick swap in and out to get in that range damage. If they think the person is going to try to parry it, right? Because then the little bit of dodge also puts some distance. It's just a basic theory. I don't really understand ranged weapons. I've never been taught in the theory of how to use them. I've just kind of like gone off, like particularly playing against, you know, like Nexus and Nebula and Immortal and stuff like that, and Lab to an extent as well. But especially, I had a lot of games with Nebula. And one of the things Nebula constantly told me was that I play unsafe. But when I would ask him what he means by that, and what he means, what constitutes as playing safe or unsafe, he did not elaborate. But one of the things he did tell me is that when you are high ping, you pretty much have to play blue. And what playing blue basically means is you're looking for weapons like, again, the heavy weapons, GS, Poleswords, but also nunchucks to an extent as well. The katana as well. Weapons where you can hold blue for a fairly long time. And the whole thing that you're trying to do with playing blue is you probably want non-standard times in a lot of cases. A lot of people are going to be looking for that fast 0.9, which is basically just as the particle effect starts. Because if you think of... You may not think of 3D games as a series of frames, but that is what they are. Animations in a 3D game are keyed to frames exactly as a 2D game like Mario or whatever. They're the exact same thing. All that a higher frame rate really does, or is supposed to do anyways, is interpolate that frame rate. But events within those frames, within the timeline of things, are still bound to either a fixed timer or a fixed frame. Now, Naraka does not use delta timers, which means that that is scaling to your animations, and those animations are scaling to your frame rate. That's why higher frame rate is always better. Always. Because it is affecting how these timers and shit are being handled. But in a normal game, you would have, let's say, a 30 or 60 FPS keyed frame. And let's say at a specific frame count, a frame hits that says, if I release an input, I'm going to fire a function that checks if this boolean is active, and if it is, we release a blue attack. In Naraka, when you charge a blue, you have this little flash. But that flash has a wind-up animation to it. That is irrelevant, completely irrelevant to actual charge periods, which is why you get what is called a 0.9 animation, a 0.9 blue release. But that's not a real thing. That actually does not exist. That's not real. There's no such thing as a 0.9. It's always a 1.0. You can't release a blue before it is actually available. It's available or it's not. But if you're just looking at the animation, you're going to basically release it before that blue flash actually technically flashes. And again, the higher frame rate you are, the easier it is to do this. But once you hit people that have played this game for a little while and they've run into that Xbox guy who just gonna run up and release that, right? Just run up and just spam the blue, and then he starts spam parrying. He's like, oh my god, he's gonna release the blue, And then they might hold for a little bit, like a 2.0, because he's spamming parry. Or they'll just keep throwing blues, which is also quite common. Then, yeah, that gets to be very predictable, right? Then you just understand the mindset of like, okay, I'm always going to release the blue because I just want that damage. And I want it now. Just want that damage, I just want it now. Then they're going to parry it every time once they know what's going on. Playing blue is to obviously break that and then leave them guessing when they're going to do anything about it. When you encounter a low ping, high FPS player, they're mostly going to be doing all kinds of floats and shit. And they're going to be juggling you all over the place. The worst is longswords and flying knives. Both of them are well capable of touch of death. Whipsword's really bad too. Both of these are bad. The katana and hangsword are also bad. You can do restands with the staff and the spear using grapples out of verticals. And the longsword can do way longer than dual blades, but dual blades is still capable of combos. Fist blades is really bad. If you're using fist blades, get into the habit of spamming jump horizontal. That's all you need to do half the times with fist blades, because the magnetism is so fucking crazy. You're gonna follow people out of their dodges everywhere, and when you encounter someone like Hypernova or Creamy that has huge FPS advantage and very low ping, you will get hit by a true combo of fucking jump attacks following something like this, and it will last like 4 or 5 attacks on top of the existing combo. Because they're animating so fast and their float timers is taking them everywhere, and then you try to dodge out and it just magnetizes back onto you. It is an extremely obnoxious weapon. All of the jump attacks are bad in general for this shit, but the fist blades are particularly bad because the animations last a lot longer. And yes, once I'm in a certain range, I can just keep doing this. The only real way to get out of that is, if you can, is to half charge so that it no longer staggers you, or to try to attack so that you can clash and reset the fight a little bit. And you're gonna just see that constantly. Is I always hit V instead of B. Is they're gonna just do their little cute combo. Look at me, I make clips on fucking TikTok, and then just spam horizontal afterwards to try to do the rest of the damage. And then by the time you reset it, you're missing half or more of your health. If they can do carousel or shit on top of it, it's really bad. Longsword is really bad if they get you on a ledge and start coasting you down a cliff, then that turns into an infinite. Or if they get you into a wall or a corner, that allows them to do an infinite as well. Endless Tears. I have a great video of this in one of my last, I think one of the contemplations of learning videos, where Endless Tears, because of the ping and FPS differences, I am on the ground. And when I am on the ground, he is able to uppercut and lift me off the ground. Because on his end, I am still halfway in the air. But on my end, I hit the ground and then I'm just suddenly in the air again. And if their FPS is high enough, they don't need a cliff or a wall. They can just infinite you on a flat surface. Fantastic. Very well designed. But most of those kinds of combos and shit like that are not available to my performance point. So the only way to try to interact is to rely on something that doesn't take those inputs, and that's to play blue. Which means you're going to need to practice these weapons and know their timers, especially the auto-release timer, because that is different for every weapon, and even between horizontal and verticals, there are differences between those as well. There's differences, I believe, even for the katana and horizontal and vertical for their 0.9 timings are also different, which has an effect when you are trying to do a combo, which, yeah, this works most of the time against players for me, but not against bots. I did it again. And if you're very spammy, you'll do that and you feel like a fucking dumbass. So this does not work most of the time against bots, but against players, it has like a 70-80% reliability, right? And it's nice if you can pull that off. But Nebula's suggestion was to play blue, and he didn't explain what that is, but Mucky suggested that it's to be looking for non-standard timers, because most people are, again, they're going to be releasing very early, or they're going to hold. They're going to overhold and make you wonder if they're going to cancel out of it. Whereas you might want to release between that. You don't look at the flashes. You look to see if they're going to try to dash out, thinking you're faking, and then maybe you can catch the dash. But again, at high frame rate, you can just dodge into a parry very easily. The inputs in this game are so specific and so confusing. I think a hold dodge always gives you root motion. It's a little awkward. I don't even understand like the full nuances of how the basic root motion attack shit works, because no one's ever explained it to me. I've just tried to learn from it. But if I like am trying to hold dodge into a blue, I seem to have to hold the input for that. The directional. I think this is the dead frame things I've heard about. Is you do not want to put in your input for your dash hold until towards the end of the animation. If you start seeing a walking animation, or if nothing happens when you input, you're actually killing the iframe portion of the animation by flipping a boolean. So you actually want to hold it. Yeah, there is just geometry disappearing back over there. I think this is sufficient for a part 1. If I think of something a little bit more structured and directed, I'll come back for a second installation in the future.